All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back here to a Thursday, October 9th, 2025 is the date. 12:03 p.m. That's local time here along the West Coast. Latest activity shows a 1.0 across California. Some larger scale movement this morning kicking up there along the Kamchatka area of Russia. Had a 6.0 earthquake coming in here, my time, around 6:30 in the morning. 6.0, another one. Man, talk about a lot of aftershock activity here. We've seen a number of earthquakes here since that 8.8 and a number of earthquakes prior to the 8.8. So let's take a look here where we're at as far as aftershock activity goes from that 8.8 that struck back here in July. Now remember, we did have a 7-pointer and a couple other 6s in there prior to the 8.8, so those were all technically foreshocks. But if you look here on this little diagram I have, this is the average number of aftershocks one could expect to see from an 8.8 earthquake here. Now, we're getting way up there above the number of, your typical numbers there. On average, we should see one aftershock around a magnitude 7.0 to 7.9. So we are currently at 2. The 7.8 and the 7.4. Those are two earthquakes following the 8.8. We did have one prior to that, the 7.4, that struck 10 days before the 8.8 struck. So you take away these four, and there's probably a couple 6s in there as well that happened before the 8.8. I think there was about 2. Anyway, we'll take away 4. That should leave 24 earthquakes of magnitude 6.0 and above. That's a lot of activity. On average, we should only see about 10. So we're pretty much double that amount. Take away a couple that happened beforehand. Either way, we're leaning on the high side. Aftershock range is, I believe we're well above that. I'm not going to go and count every single 5-pointer or every single 4-pointer out here, but we're definitely on the high side in terms of the magnitude sequence out here for aftershock activity. Always some possibility that we could see some further larger movement out here along the Kamchatka area, as that 8.8 earthquake back in July only partially relieved the strain out here. So watching that closely. Obviously, this could go either way. This could die off, and it might be an extended time before we see another large event, or it could continue to kind of make a migrational pattern down here to finish off the rest of the Kamchatka Trench there that's been building up some steam and strain there. Look at the movement down in New Zealand area. A couple 3s, but just north there, 5.2 along the Kermadec Trench. Most of the activity today has drifted away from the center portion here of the Pacific Plate, right? The Pacific Plate boundary with the Filipino Plate and other areas here. In the last couple days, most of the movement has been clustered here around this area. We're starting to spread away from the center into areas along the edges there of the Pacific Plate. That may fill in here. I'm thinking back build across the Aleutian Trench, where it's somewhat quiet right now. With that 6-pointer striking out here this morning, we could definitely see this area fill in terms of larger movement here today. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. New Zealand, of course, down here is always underneath a bunch of strain and concern here, where we could see a larger event as well because of the amount of time that has passed for a number of fault systems there across New Zealand. There was one earthquake here. Looks like that's from yesterday, just about ready to drop off the 24-hour threshold for a 4.5. Let's take a look here at and by the way, if you look here on the map, things have gone absolutely quiet from the Japan region southward. This whole area is absolutely quiet now. As I mentioned, we're kind of backing off the center portion, but it doesn't mean that this area is not on target here to see some larger activity. It just, the way this movement is happening today with the larger events north and south, it just looks like it should fill in across certain areas further away from that center point boundary. But we'll still keep an eye on that. Washington region, a couple smaller quakes up at Mount St. Helens. Are actually reporting some this morning, so that's good news. This is on the eastern flank there of Mount St. Helens. The latest and the largest at 0.6. So let's go see what's going on there for the that volcano up there. Mount St. Helens is one of about 3 volcanoes there that's seen an uptick in earthquake activity in the last couple months. Mount Rainier being the largest in terms of the earthquake swarming, as far as the multitude of counts there. But Mount St. Helens here had a little bit of earthquake activity as well. There's some of the events today, and it looks like one in the last 2 hours as well. That's let's go up here and check this seismograph station up at the dome. It definitely should have picked those earthquakes up here. Let's see. All right, so I'm guessing that's one there within the last hour, right? That's a little quake. Now, 10:29. The USGS is not reporting that one in the last, I guess it would be 2 hours, right? That's what the PNSN network shows. So, little 0.6 at 10:30 local time. Little 0.6 at 10:30. 10:30. Well, 10:30 could be this one right here, or maybe this one. So if that's a little 0.6, what about all these other ones that are stirring up out here that look very similar, like earthquakes? I don't understand the reasoning here as to only reporting, a small fraction of the events here. Well, yeah, we'll throw a couple earthquakes up on the map, make it look like we're doing our job. I understand the stress and strain that's going on there with the government at the moment, but that's political. I try not to do any of that here on this channel. So there's a 0.6 this morning at 10:30, and also a 0.4 at 6:30. So let's see the 6:31. A little 0.4 at 6:30. 6:34 or so. Well, that could be this one right here. A little. Can you guys even see that? That's like the smallest out of all of them out here, but they decide to count that little one. Let me run over here to a different seismograph station here, maybe a little bit closer to this area, but some of these may be offline. East Dome, Mount St. Helens. There's one last night. That was at about 10:30 or so. Notice that one right here. Was that reported 10:30? Yeah, it was. That's a little one-pointer. So that showed up the largest out of all of these on this seismograph station here. There's that one about 10:30 or so. It did show up on this seismograph station, but this is at a distance away from the dome area. So there's a lot of activity, I believe, happening at or directly underneath this area that's not getting picked up by this seismograph station here. Let me see one more. What about this one up here? Sugar Bowl. All right. So this one's fairly well tuned. It looks good. There's the earthquake from last night, little one-pointer. Also one from yesterday as well. They did not count that one. That one did not get reported. That one struck around 7 something last night. So this is a one-pointer. That's got to be up there close to a one-pointer. As far as these other events that are showing up, they're hard to spot on this seismograph station. But when you go to the other one here, up at the... Let's see if this one's working. Yeah, this one's picking up some of the data as well. There's a one-pointer. And look at all those other events there around the area. Anyway, and we could go back the last couple days here, and I could show you guys the amount of earthquakes that have been striking up out there across the Mount St. Helens area, and only a fraction of the events are getting reported. That's today's. So we go back to the UTC time of yesterday. Look at all those events early in the morning and afternoon. There's a lot, but imagine the panic that's going to happen if they show hundreds of earthquakes up at Mount St. Helens, and then hundreds up here around Mount Rainier, and hundreds down at Mount Hood. Everyone would be like, what is going on out here? But it's nothing of concern in terms of volcanic eruption. There's just, it seems like some swarms going on, earthquake swarms across a couple volcanoes. No uplift going on. That would obviously be a sign of, leading up to an eruption. But Mount St. Helens is just one that's had some earthquake swarming going on. Mount Rainier, the other one that's probably had 15,000 earthquakes here in the last couple months. It all started back in July. Let's go over here to the Mount Rainier, and we'll take a look here, make sure the bells are off, which they are. This is Mount Rainier. I know they're not showing much on the map here for now, but there's some noise out there. Some of these could be rock falls. Some may be ice quakes. That's what they state they are sometimes. But some of these are indeed earthquake events as well. And there's nothing showing up on the graph there as far as any recorded earthquakes. And when you compare that, let's get a full view here. We'll go back to yesterday. See all those little events out there? Some of those are definitely earthquakes. Now, whether they're important to count or not, I think they are, because that would mean that the earthquake swarm is still ongoing. But compare this to July when this all stirred up. We'll go to July 10th. That is when things are really rocking and rolling. We've seen hundreds of earthquakes each day there for, about a week or two. It was about 2 weeks, I think. And then it died off to where we're at right now. We're nowhere near the level seen back then, but we're still seeing some earthquake activity. And that reporting has dropped off sharp. And it did drop off around the end of August or so. And occasionally, like I say, they'll pop up some data here for a couple volcanoes. But Mount Hood down here as well is another area that's been having some earthquake activity. Now, whether it's just all stress and strain from the Cascadia to the west, or maybe something increase, maybe the subduction there of the Juan de Fuca plate underneath the North American plate is further fueling the volcanoes out there, right? Because that's where they get the magma and stuff comes from the subduction there. Subducting here dives underneath the North American plate, melts when you get down into the heated areas, and then all that rises up there for the volcanoes. Maybe that's what's going on there. I mean, we could be living in some interesting times. But let me see here what we got for Mount Hood. Because yesterday when we checked this, they were having some quakes as well. See that? Those are earthquakes. There's one that's well defined. And look at that. Nothing being reported. Zip, zero, nada. But I would say those are definitely some smaller events. Very small. But if you go back the last couple days, there's been a number of them. How come no reporting on any of these? And don't tell me those are ice quakes and rock falls. So I've just been kind of watching it. That's just a number of volcanoes out there through the Cascades. It's been somewhat elevated. And other, let's see, what else we could check here. Mount Adams. Very limited in terms of monitoring stations out there. In fact, the nearest one sits way down here to the southwest outside of the volcano zone. So, I mean, that doesn't really help out in terms of seeing what's happening directly underneath the volcano. This doesn't even look all that great of a seismograph station there. Mount Jefferson. Got one earthquake way out here, way off the summit. And this one here, I mean, there's nothing that's showing up on the graph, but a lot of these events, whatever's going on is, it seems like it's directly underneath the summit area. But what can we do? We can just watch it and report back on it and see what happens there. Watch for signs of inflation, and right now there is none. One earthquake at 3 o'clock this morning on the Seattle Fault. There was another earthquake here west of there yesterday, a little 2.8. That one's fairly deep, though. This one's deep as well. Seattle Fault has potential to produce a mid 7.0 earthquake directly underneath Seattle. That's been thousands of years since that's happened, and the regular intervals run about a couple thousands of years. So could be, we could be looking at some large events out here soon. I don't know if you guys caught my video last night, but this article that's floating around on social media and all the news agencies here are definitely taking advantage of it, because there's been a new study put out here. Scientists went out and studied, it's a marine geologist stating that they drilled holes offshore into the deep sea sediment core. The sediment cores representing about 3,100 years of geologic history. They analyzed those layers right there, and there's turbidites that are deposited by underwater landslides, often triggered by earthquakes. And they compared those layers and stuff and found a link between the Cascadia subduction zone and the layers that they found around the San Andreas fault offshore. And they say here that they could trigger one another. And that's a bad deal if that happens. I'm thinking it could be vice versa as well. There are 3 instances in the past 1,500 years, including a most recent one from 1700 when the Cascadia ruptured, when the researchers believed that ruptures were just minutes to hours apart. So imagine having a big 9.0 up in Cascadia. Next thing we know, we got the San Andreas fault going through San Francisco. And technically, that could maybe extend further down south. You know, imagine that broad-scale event from all the way up here, all the way down. I mean, this area of the plate boundary is well overdue. The San Andreas fault. Northern segment's just been over 100 years since the 1906 earthquake. But the Cascadia subduction zone, over 300 years. So, you know, imagine that. Just lighting up out here. That'd be an incredible earthquake and a lot of damage at that. That's like a worst case scenario. But anyway, yeah, this article's not super long, but it is very important and very interesting. So go check that out if you didn't get a chance to watch that last night. It's all over the news media right now. Of the San Andreas fault right now, we got really nothing major going on. Let's see what we got for 2.5 and above. A couple earthquakes. Got one in Berkeley. That's actually on the Hayward Fault up here. Hayward Fault's starting to show some movement again, it looks like. Just one earthquake. It's so crazy. There's so much that's overdue out here. Hayward Fault's just one of them, you know. It's like we're living on borrowed time out here right now. None of these events have happened recently. So, you know, that should wake us all up out here. The Hayward Fault is definitely overdue for a big earthquake out here. In fact, they had a swarm out here in the last 30 days. This is the Hayward Fault. You can't really see it on the map now, but they had about 32 earthquakes, including today's event, in the last 30 days. A little swarm here, a little swarm there, and some movement down south. But the importance of this is, you know, it goes right through the East Bay area of the San Francisco region. You're talking about Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond, huge population density out there. And it goes right through that region. When that thing hits, it's going to be a fairly damaging event. You know, when you think about the Cascadia and the San Andreas fault going, what could happen inland with a number of these fault systems off of the plate boundary that are well overdue? They could trigger multiple faults out here. You know, if you really think about it, when it all comes to time, there's been so much time here since we've seen big events along the plate boundary and also inland faults. I can see a whole bunch of craziness going on here. But for now, just a 2.5. Just a friendly reminder to be prepared. Also, what else we got here? 2.6 out in Brawley seismic zone. Looks like nothing big. Double check that. Well, there's a little bit of earthquake activity here stretching up towards the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault that sits right here. That's it. That area right there is locked at 300 years or more since an earthquake struck there. This darker line, it did not rupture back in 1857 when this portion of the southern branch produced a 7.9. So makes sense here when the next one goes, and we're overdue here along even this section of the San Andreas Fault. It will take the entirety here, resulting in an 8.1 earthquake with this extra extension here. You know, it's part of the southern branch that will bump it up to about an 8.1. And that could happen at any time there. But we do have some earthquake activity around the Brawley seismic zone off of the San Andreas Fault, the southern end today as well. up, looks like around Running Springs, Lake Arrowhead area. A little swarm going on here from yesterday. A bunch of 1s and 2s. Some activity here in Los Angeles area as well, 2.3 and a 1.2. That's at the northern end of the Elsinore fault here, off the fault zone it looks like. So just be on guard, folks. We've been pretty lucky out here if you really think about it recently. Yeah, the Ridgecrest earthquakes, that was a pretty large event, but that wasn't even on the San Andreas fault. It's related to the strain that happens out here along the Garlock Fault shear zone, which is this one, and the San Andreas fault interaction presses up here, creates all these other faults inland through the Sierra Nevada mountains, and that 6.9 and 7.1 as a result of all the strain building up out here. But that's nothing compared to what the San Andreas fault, the plate boundary, can produce. So we do got to be on guard, folks. Let's see here. Nothing new to report across Nevada as far as this area goes. Yellowstone National Park, they were having a little bit of earthquake activity yesterday. I don't see anything else being reported overnight, but we will double check that, see what we got. Excuse me. Got some more rain coming in, cooler temperatures. It's literally starting to feel like fall out here right now in Northern California. I think last year at this time we're close to 100. There's some of the activity from last night. I believe that was a 2.7 there around Mammoth. That did show up quite nicely. And they did add the one quake I mentioned, right? They did report the 2.7. And then when I was doing the update last night, they failed to report the 2.1. But they got it today. There it is, 2.7, 2.1. A couple other smaller events in there as well. These events look like they may be at a distance there. Which ones were those? Yeah, it looks like some events over there in Idaho that would match some of that time frame out there. Well, no, this is around 9 o'clock or so. Wonder what's going on there. I don't see anything from around 9 o'clock, but there's a 6-pointer in Kamchatka, Russia area. That's a big distant earthquake, and that would match that 6:30 time period when that 6-pointer struck in Russia. But these events here look like they're at a distance away from this area. They could be deep quakes, but who knows? We'll definitely keep checking back on it. Nothing big happening at Yellowstone for now. This thing would be swelling like crazy and producing 5s and 6s, and then it would pop. But I don't think we're anywhere near a super volcano eruption. Pretty active out here across the Permian Basin there of Texas. The oil fields rocking and rolling. Looks like, see how many earthquakes we got here. 41 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. A little bit from today, a little bit from yesterday. This area can get some upper 4s and some 5s when things really begin to crunch out here. I know these guys don't want to see 5s out in the oil fields, but I don't think anyone does, right? But when you poke holes out here and inject the wastewater and whatnot, it does create a bunch of fracturing, maybe on some older faults underneath the area. But it's pretty active out here in the last couple days. One earthquake, it's outside the New Madrid seismic zone there from yesterday. Trying not to get hiccups are starting to come though, but see if I can squash them down. Never fails. Hawaii, anything new going on here today? Been watching this. It's been fairly active around the Big Island here recently. A lot of earthquakes all over the Big Island. That's normally a sign there of just the weight of the Hawaii Islands there upon the Pacific plate, the oceanic crust here. And, you think about it, you got magma coming up and creating these new islands over time, and it does add stress and strain there across the Pacific plate. This is the old chain, long time ago. And we'll continue to work our way down this fashion, I believe, until something else changes. But for now, let's go check on the Kilauea volcano, see what's going on there. See if anything's changed here today. All right. Still looking at episode, what is it, 35 coming up now, I believe. No change here. This is the electronic tilt at the Kilauea Summit and East Rift Zone. This is the past month. This is the past 3 months. This is the past year. That the whole rinse and repeat cycle, yeah, it's been going on since December of last year. Looks like we're on cue here to see another eruption. We still have a number of days, though. Getting a little bit more of a slower inflationary level compared to the last couple ones, but we got a little ways to go. It may be fairly lengthy, similar to this one right here. That one took a little bit longer to build up to the eruption time period, but we'll keep checking back on that. All right, let's see what else we got here. 3.0 across the Java Trench right now. We're definitely getting some migration here going on. Goodness. Missy Mimi's is to blame for this. I'm just kidding. No, it's not her fault. Illnesses go around. She was sick here last couple days, coughing up a bunch of stuff, and just not good. But I'm starting to feel a little itch in my throat, but I've never really caught it. I've been stocking up here on a lot of my nutrients and vitamins. Java Trench, Sumatra area, some migration heading up north here, up towards the Andaman Sea area. That may be an area of interest to watch, considering we did have a 5.5 earthquake here yesterday. So watch that area there. It's going to be right around the Andaman Sea area and up to about Myanmar, Burma area or so. Nothing shown up here on the USGS map, but there is definitely earthquake activity out there. Let's see. Middle America Trench, bunch of 3s and 4s. Nothing new there. Same for the South America area. The Atlantic Ocean, fairly quiet. Couple 5s down there across the Antarctica plate boundary with the South America plate. That's going to be on the... oh, no, excuse me. I'm way out here. How'd that happen? Australia plate and the Africa plate. Excuse me. That's happening down here, south here of Africa, right about in this area. So most of the time during these spreading seafloor center events, I can kind of push the plate here off to the northeast, interacting and enhancing earthquake activity there across the Mediterranean and other areas up here. I don't see any immediate effects, but we'll definitely watch this region. It's been pretty active out there across Turkey area. Bunch of, I don't know if I want to call them aftershocks. Right now they're aftershocks, but there's been a whole bunch of earthquake activity from a 6-pointer that stirred up here a couple months ago. Just been an unusual amount of activity. All right, so we'll see what happens. We do have a fairly large coronal hole facing us, right? So if we're going to compare, if we're going to, write this down in the book here that, hey, look at all this large earthquake activity that struck following this large coronal hole. I don't know if we can count a 6-point, the 6-pointer today as a result, of that coronal hole. It's one of those things where you probably could. Maybe I'll mark it down as a 6-pointer while this coronal hole was facing us, but it's one of those things. I don't want to say, yes, man, this is the reason why we're seeing large earthquake activity, because there's a coronal hole facing us. I just can't go to that level yet, because I'm not 100% convinced that a coronal hole is responsible for earthquake activity on this planet. Now, is there some relation? Can it potentially trigger? It has happened in the past, but not all the time. We'll just see. This could take years down the road to provide a link, a definite scientific linkage between the two. I do think the sun has a lot to do with stuff here on this planet for sure. But direct relation, we'll just kind of watch it. That's why I'm keeping notes here. I'm not the only one that's keeping notes as well. So 85 facing us. This is fairly recent. a little bit behind in terms of the UTC time, but coronal hole 85 shooting out high-speed solar wind stream, also magnetic lines directly out into space instead of the magnetic lines, looping back in on themselves with sunspots. This is just shooting straight out from this area. And that should amplify the auroras here in a couple days. I don't see anything stirring up on the forecast for now, but once they come out with it, and once a high-speed solar wind stream reaches the planet here, then we'll see that change as far as the aurora potential. Wow. Where'd that come from? A decent M flare. A decent one. Overnight. Go figure. It's from a looks like a far side region over there. 4236 produced a M 2.0 flare. Maybe it looked like it was a long duration flare as well. 4236. That would be way over here. I mean, one of these sunspots, but this here is recent imagery of the current Earth-facing side sunspots. These are really weak here, folks. Not really going to see anything from them. That's why I dropped all my flare threats as far as the level goes. There's one newer area back over here on the southeastern area of the sun, but just looking at that does not look all that impressive with any magnetic complexity. So I'm going to continue to keep my flare threat low, like this low. 60% chance for a C flare, M flare at 10%, X flare at 1%. Hello, solar minimum. And we're not quite there yet at solar minimum. We'll continue to see, some flaring activity. Eventually, though, we'll be in the solar minimum here in a number of years. Let's see here. Probability, we're good on that. Okay. Yeah, nothing major going on there on the sun for now. Just that M flare that popped off there on the far western limb of the sun. This one looks fairly recent. Notice that coronal hole here is facing starting to head over to the west a little bit. Not so much center disk here of the Earth-Sun plane, but we'll see what happens here. As far as earthquake activity goes, it's definitely interesting. All right, anything going on for asteroids? Got any surprises out there? Hopefully not. That would not be good. But you never know. It could obviously pop up. This one's pretty close. 91-foot airplane-sized asteroid, 307,000 miles coming in today. But still, that's just outside. Well, definitely outside the Earth-Moon distance there. 239,000 miles is the average distance between the Earth and Moon. Of course, that does fluctuate. Everything else out there, millions of miles away. I don't see any immediate threats. Severe weather, really no threat out there today either. This is just thunderstorm activity in the light green. Nothing for tornado, wind, or hail threat. Numerical models are increasingly confident, or increasing in confidence that we are going to have a wet next week out here across the west coast. Looks like all of California is going to get in on some rain. Uh-oh, what have we got down there in the Gulf? You guys see that? A little spin up down here around the 17th there of October. So we got about 8 days or so. Something's spinning out there, forming, and potentially it could be a tropical system. We'll have to check back on that. It's been relatively quiet out there across the Gulf and the eastern portion of the country. Most of the hurricanes been out in the Atlantic and just kind of got diverted away from land. But we're still within hurricane season, so this is a GFS model. It's kind of got about offshore flow to it here, just barely hitting the valley. Let me see what the ECMWF model shows. That shows a little bit more inland, inland precipitation than the GFS model does. I'm a little bit more inclined to believe the ECMWF model. They tend to be a little bit more accurate than the GFS, but we'll check. We'll definitely check back on that. Either way, I'm enjoying the cooler weather out here, and it looks like we will have some rain in the forecast here for the West Coast. Total accumulated precipitation runs fairly impressive out here across Northern California. Not so much across this area. Is this the desert southeast? Just kidding. You guys, you'll definitely get some rain. Depending on that tropical system there, that could definitely bring a lot of rain if it happens to head up in this area. All right. I think that's about it for now, folks. Just gonna take Missy Mimi's out here for a lunch, maybe an early dinner. It's our 4-year anniversary. So I'm gonna take her out for a little surprise dinner on our anniversary here. It's just kind of a big day. I do like to celebrate those important moments. 4 years, I can't believe it's crazy. But Missy Mimi is, of course, the other half of me, the other half of the channel here. And occasionally she'll jump on, not as much as she used to, but I'll see if I can get her to jump on again here for the member drawing. That'll be held here in about 11 days. It's a members only drawing where we give away cash prizes or other stuff if you want it, like geology stuff and maybe some Earthmaster merchandise, clothing, coffee mug, something that you like. We do that every single month here. And that's for the members. So if you're not a member, jump on board. There's many more benefits besides just the drawing. All right, I'm out of here, folks. Enjoy your Thursday. I got the dates right this time. It's been a long time since I messed up like that the other day. It was yesterday. I put Thursday update in the thumbnail title, for the thumbnail image. I haven't done that in, I don't know. I think it's been over a year. So one mistake. Ooh, man, you should have seen the comments. It was pretty crazy. Not going to repeat everything, but all right, we'll catch you guys out here later on for the Thursday night update. Take care.